On March 24, 2015, Germanwings Flight 9525, operated by an Airbus A320, departed from Barcelona bound to Düsseldorf, Germany. During the flight, an air traffic control noticed that the pilot had set the flight altitude to 100 feet instead of 38,000 feet.
Why?
In the air traffic control tower, everyone is puzzled and asking, what's going on? Why did this happen? It's unprecedented for an aircraft in flight to attempt such an action. Air traffic control attempted to contact the aircraft but received no response. The aircraft is descending altitude with each passing moment. While air traffic control is aware of the situation, no one on the aircraft is responding. There were 150 passengers on board, which heightened their concerns. They requested assistance from the French Air Force. The Air Force immediately dispatched a Mirage fighter jet to assess the situation. However, the Mirage never reaches the aircraft. Before the Mirage could intercept it, the Germanwings aircraft collides with the Alps in southern France, resulting in the death of all 150 passengers. First, I should mention that Germanwings was a subsidiary of the Lufthansa group, which existed at the time of the incident. The Airbus A320 crashed into the mountains without any problem and any conversation from the pilot. This raised suspicions. Investigative teams from various countries went to the crash site and began their inquiries. The truth behind the incident became clear very quickly after investigations and analysis of the black box. At 8 a.m., when this Airbus was preparing for flight, all safety checks were passed and everything was confirmed as ready for departure. The pilot of this aircraft was Patrick Sondenheimer, an experienced pilot with over 6,000 hours of flight experience. However, the co-pilot of this aircraft was a novice, Andres Lubitz, who had only 630 hours of flight experience. This plane, with this flight crew, at 9 a.m. departs from Barcelona. 27 minutes into the flight, the aircraft reaches its cruising altitude of 38,000 feet. At this point, there is only an hour and a half of flight remaining until Düsseldorf. Sondenheimer asks his co-pilot to check the weather in Düsseldorf so they can prepare for landing. Meanwhile, Lubitz responds with, "Hopefully we will see," which is quite peculiar given the circumstances. Sondenheimer disregarded Lubitz's comment and assumed he was checking the weather in Düsseldorf. It's now 9:30 in the morning. Sondenheimer tells Lubitz, "I'm going to the restroom, I've turned on the autopilot." As Sondenheimer exits the cockpit, Lubitz initiates a descent from 38,000 feet to 100 feet. At this moment, air traffic control attempts to contact the cockpit, but only Lubitz responds. Lubitz then locks the cockpit door, preventing Sondenheimer from re-entering. You should know that after September 11, the cockpit doors of all passenger aircrafts have been heavily reinforced, meaning they are robust and cannot be easily broken or opened even with tools. When Lubitz initiates the descent of the aircraft to 100 feet, it descends smoothly because it is under autopilot control, making it imperceptible to passengers. The aircraft is descending. In this situation, the only one aware that the aircraft is descending is Lubitz and also the air traffic control. The air traffic control tower repeatedly tries to contact the cockpit, but Lubitz does not respond. They said in this situation we could hear Lubitz's breathing, but there was no response. Sondenheimer's visit to the restroom doesn't take more than a minute, and as he exists intending to return to the cockpit, he finds it locked. He initially assumes it's accidentally locked and starts knocking, but Lubitz doesn't respond. The captain becomes deeply concerned, banging on the door and pleading, "Open up!" but Lubitz remains unresponsive. The aircraft is descending lower with each passing moment. Sondenheimer, the captain of the aircraft, deeply worried, moves and looks out the aircraft window to assess their situation. He sees it's extremely perilous because they are descending very low. Again towards the cockpit area. He knew that the door couldn't be opened in any way unless unlocked from the inside. There are access in the aircraft emergency equipment. Therefore, the captain instructs one of the flight attendants, "Go and fetch the axe, maybe I can break open the door." They bring the axe, but unfortunately it cannot break open the door. 11 minutes after Lubitz locks the cockpit door at 10:41 a.m., the aircraft collides with the Alps and all 150 people on board, including several children, are killed instantly. The aircraft's speed at the time of the impact was 700 kilometers per hour, causing it to disintegrate, leaving little trace. Despite the challenging terrain of the crash site, French gendarmes quickly reached the area by helicopters, realizing they must act swiftly to rescue any survivors. However, upon arrival, they witnessed the complete destruction of the aircraft and realized no one could have survived. They immediately understood that the aircraft had deliberately crashed into the mountains because it neither reduced its speed nor attempted to pull up. 4 countries embarked on investigations to determine the cause of this disaster: Germany, Spain, England, and the United States. The black box was found in this condition, meaning it was damaged. All in all, they were able to read it. After more than a month of investigation, on May 5th, 2015, they released a report stating that the co-pilot Lubitz deliberately crashed the plane into the mountain. But why? The number one responsibility of any pilot is to protect the lives of passengers. So why did Lubitz intentionally kill everyone? Women, men, old, young, and children? Andres Lubitz was born in Bavaria, Germany in 1987. He was an ordinary child who had passion for airplanes from a young age. His interest was so intense that his parents enrolled him in aviation school when he was only 14 years old. If you ask his family or friends what kind of a person Lubitz was, they would say he was just an ordinary guy. His only problem was his love for airplanes, and he often talked about them. Lubitz enrolled in Lufthansa flight training school at the age of 20, which was a significant step for someone of his age and experience. In 2013, at the age of 26, Andres Lubitz became a co-pilot for Germanwings, a subsidiary of Lufthansa. It's uncommon for someone to become a co-pilot at such a young age, but Lubitz demonstrated he was capable of handling the responsibilities. Up to this point, Andres Lubitz appears to be an ordinary person, so why did he commit this act? The truth remained elusive until they entered his apartment and discovered a disturbing clue. They quickly realized that Lubitz had been hiding a significant secret from everyone. He suffered from both mental health issues and anxiety problems, issues severe enough to have potentially prevented him from being a taxi driver, let alone a pilot responsible for the lives of 150 passengers. When they examined his medical records, they discovered that Lubitz had been under medical supervision, but he had been seeing a private doctor to prevent his condition from coming to the attention of Lufthansa. They found medical documents indicating that Lubitz suffered from delusions, believing he was going blind, which greatly distressed him. He had expressed concerns that if he became blind, he would no longer be able to fly. Despite reassurance from private doctors that he was not going blind and had no visual impairments, Lubitz persisted in his belief. These thoughts led to the conclusion that he needed treatment, so he was prescribed a handful of antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications. He obtained these medications from sources that wouldn't appear in his medical records, ensuring that Lufthansa remained unaware. Because organizational doctors always prescribe antidepressants or anti-anxiety pills, the law is that in such circumstances, the employer must be informed so they can make a decision, especially when the individual holds such a sensitive position. Lufthansa had no knowledge of Lubitz's medical records, a 20-year-old young man, a successful pilot with no physical problems, but his mind was paralyzed. When they retrieved Lubitz's computer history, they found that he had frequently searched on Google for ways to commit suicide. Google, as you know, doesn't provide specific answers. It simply suggests calling certain numbers if help is needed. In any case, this individual was highly unusual. You can't say he was just depressed or anxious, because a depressed person wouldn't be willing to take 149 innocent lives along with their own. Ultimately, it was concluded that he had both sadism and psychosis, because such an act could result from sadism rather than just other psychological issues. Lufthansa also compensated the families of the victims well. The families of the passengers filed complaints against Lufthansa, and ultimately Lufthansa paid 75,000 euros to each family. The International Air Transport Association, IATA, also enacted a law requiring all pilots to undergo medical and psychological examinations annually to assess both their physical and mental health. Another law they enacted was that if a pilot or co-pilot leaves the cockpit and goes to the restroom, a flight attendant must enter the cockpit and take their place until they return. Leaving one person alone in the cockpit is now illegal. The problem with air travel is that when something goes wrong and problems arise, there is no escape route and you have to surrender. If you could, what law would you enact for flights and pilots? Share your opinions with us. Don't forget to like and subscribe.